Welcome to Inside Racing and thanks for joining us. I'm sure many of the 101,000 people who packed Flemington Racecourse for the centenary Melbourne Cup of 1960 would have noticed a smiling 16-year-old Aboriginal jockey riding a horse called Dow Street. They were even more aware of his involvement shortly after the start of the Cup when Dow Street crashed to the turf. That nasty spill so early in his career did nothing to dim the enthusiasm of Richard Lawrence McCarthy, who, as Darby McCarthy, went on to become one of Australia's best and at times most controversial jockeys. Darby McCarthy could generate headlines both on and off the track. Headlines like the ones he generated when he fell through a plate glass door, sustaining very nasty injuries, or headlines like the ones he generated in October 1969 when he won the Derby and the Epsom on the same program here at Royal Randwick. It's high time we caught up with this great character of Australian racing, and for the purpose of the interview, we asked Darby to return to the scene of some of his greatest triumphs, Randwick Racecourse in Sydney. He's over there right now, believe it or not, jumping on the scales. Let's go and say hello. Well, Darb, in this day and age, it doesn't matter a hoot what weight you are.
That's right, John.
Just doesn't matter anymore.
That's true.
By gee, there were times it mattered, though.
There sure were. Many times it mattered. Yeah, I fought the scales for, I suppose, the last 15 years of my life as a jockey. It was my enemy.
What are your memories of childhood days at Cunnamulla? Happy times? Tough times?
Well, John, I suppose a bit of pepper and salt. There were good times, there were unhappy times. I guess when I went to work for a grazier outside of Thargomindah were my happy times. I was only about between 8 and 9 years of age. And when I went there, I was employed for the grazier's wife's eyes, who had impaired vision, called cattle blight from the dust and that sort of stuff. And a chap called Jack Maguire, the buckjumper fames, and he was a stockman. He said, "I'll nickname you Darby after my favourite jockey, Darby Munro," and stuck with me.
Now, your real name is Richard Lawrence McCarthy.
Exactly right.
Does anybody call you Richard?
Family calls me Richard. Half of them, most of them call me Darby. It stuck to me right throughout my life, I suppose.
Well, riding horses was something you were doing from a very tender age, but you were riding them bareback. What a tremendous grounding. What a way to learn balance.
I loved it. I would spend most of my time out on the ponies and riding whenever time available. In the morning, early part, and afternoons I'd be out riding the pony, bareback most times. And if we had any stragglers that for shearing time, or I'd go out with the old grazier, he was about 70 something, and we'd go out and get the stragglers and come in. I'd love that. So I guess in a sense, it was doing something I just loved doing. I just loved being with animals, especially the horses. It's like breathing. I just loved it.
But that natural way of riding the animal, bareback, must have given you a kick start, an affinity that many other jockeys would never have had.
True. I guess sort of later on in life, when I did come to the city, I probably had a fairly good start on the City Kids. Wouldn't have had that opportunity to ride horses most days, and mind you, at the time, about 50 kilometres away at a place called Thargomindah, they had a returned soldiers meeting and a flying doctors meeting.
Is that the first time you donned the colours?
Exactly.
At age, what, 10?
10-year-old.
Yeah. Everybody turned a blind eye to your age, obviously.
Well, they just said how old, it was an unregistered meeting. They corn-fed one. Did all his ride, and the steward officiating, he was convinced that I was quite capable of riding a big knee pad saddle, and it was a half-mile flutter, I suppose, a 800 metre race.
And swallowing plenty of dust.
Well, I didn't actually. I was one of the first to leave a rope strand barrier, and I flew to the front, and away I went, and I won the race, and I was King Billy after that.
You were first indentured to a man called Tim Hennessy in Brisbane, and then later had your papers transferred to a man who was destined to become a lifelong friend, Mal Barnes. And I know the man had an enormous influence on your life.
He was my second father, Mal Barnes. My dad was very, very sick when I came down to Brisbane at that time, and I didn't have him very close to me, and at this time of my life, he advised me and helped me and gave me a lot of guidance, which I guess was missing in my life, because I'd been a lone soldier. I was doing my thing. I was out there getting my little 10 bob or quid a week of the greys here. I'd come down, I was apprenticed, and getting £1 a week there, and I didn't care. I was looking after horses, and that's all I wanted to do anyway. I wanted to ride those horses and be looking after those, and of course I excelled, and I came very quick in my life, John, and I didn't handle it very well. I made mistakes, and who doesn't make mistakes? But then I made many.
Did you start to believe your own publicity as the success increased?
Yes and no. Mal saw it in me, and he wanted to hold me together and guide me in a path that would assist me later on in life, and it did in many, many ways. At that time, he had another apprentice called Larry Olsen that joined us a little bit later. So Larry and I have always been a bit close. We had a little place called Nudgee Beach. Nudgee Beach was a place that we prepared my first Stradbroke winner called Malala, who had a fall as a 2-year-old and broke his wither, and Bart Sinclair Senior and myself, we worked the horse on the beach because he was jarring up, and I had fond memories of Nudgee Beach for the Stradbroke winner, my first one.
Was he your first Group 1 winner, Malala? I think that was around 1963, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. At that time I would have been, I was 18 years of age.
Great thrill.
Great thrill.
Here's Malala with the white jacket finishing fast under the whip. Close to the post, Malala gets the upper hand and wins from the fast finishing Prunda with Samson third. Breaking the race record, Malala with apprentice jockey Darby McCarthy makes the Stradbroke an all-Queensland affair.
You made the Stradbroke your own in the 1960s. I think your second win was on a bonny little mare called Seeley's Image.
Yes.
What do you remember of that day?
Well, it was a fluke ride, and I guess I was very lucky to get on horses like this. They had the ability to do that, and she was a great little mare. And I fluked that ride because I understand that ride was offered to George Moore and I think Des Lake, and I was asked to ride her, and she won. And that was my second one.
And you weren't finished there.
No.
There was yet another.
Yes. The following year I rode a mare called Ripper in 65, and she needed one gallop and she would have won the Stradbroke. But she was slightly underdone. Great mare, Ripper. The following year was 66, and I was 21 years of age. I jagged. They used to run a treble at that time, John, called the O'Shea Stakes, the Stradbroke, and the Brisbane Cup. And I jagged the three of these races. I won the O'Shea Stakes on a horse called Arpa. I won the Stradbroke on a horse called Castaneer, and I also won the Brisbane Cup on Harper.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Castania firstly. He was trained by the late Herb Sampson.
That's right.
He was by Persian Book.
Yep.
And a very, very talented horse. How clearly do you remember that Stradbroke?
I understand we beat a horse called Maritana. Is that right? No,
Jeff Murphy's horse.
Yeah. Well, there's a story attached to that. I was riding for Jeff early in '66, and he said, "Darb," he said, "you're mucking up." He said, "Go home." So I went home, and then of course he brought Maritana up and put Harry White rode it, and he's a bit of a danger, this horse, and went over the half-mile crossing. I looked over and said, "Oh, yes, you're travelling very well, Maritana. I'm going to track you." So we did, and I beat him a half a length. We come back in the enclosure, I shook my feet out of the eyes, looked at Jeffrey. I said, "How do you like them, Jeffrey? How do you like them apples?" And he just looked at me.
Yeah.
Great friend of mine, love the man. He's now gone.
You won the O'Shea Stakes on Harper, and he went on to win the Brisbane Cup. And I think he led for a good part of the trip.
That's right, he led most of the journey. He's only headed, John, I suppose, inside the furlong pole. I'm not quite sure who rode T-Biscuit. He ran about a half a neck in front of me, and I had enough petrol in me to win by a similar margin, about a half a neck. It's a great effort because it was a 3,200 metre race.
4th of October 1969 was the pinnacle of your career, your day of days. Within a space of 40 minutes, you won the Epsom Handicap on Broker's Tip and the AJC Derby on Divide and Rule. I imagine you'd have to rate Broker's Tip possibly the best horse you've ridden, certainly the best sprinter miler.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Yeah, he sits up there. His record proves that.
They're the fair to settle down and fight it out with Broker's Tip rattling home at the rate of knots. El Rello in front. Broker's Tip going to him with every stride, and they split the line. Camera this time on the Epsom. You can bet London to a brick on Broker's Tip.
He beat Al Rello, didn't he?
Al Rello, Roy Higgins, yeah. I looked at him at the top of the straight and I said, "Oh, you've got a handful of horse there, Roy. I've got to track you." I beat him, I think, a head or half a head. Very close finish.
Now, your Derby win on Divide and Rule was regarded by the experts at the time as being the easiest Derby win since Tulloch.
But it's Divide and Rule's Derby. Mighty Concord trying hard to get to him, so too is Gallicus, but Divide and Rule is too good. Divide and Rule first, a dead heat for second in the Derby.
At that time, I suppose I'd have been anyone that knew how good this horse was, because he was improving. I call a horse like Divide and Rule, John, a horse that can run you 1,000 metres in Group 1 time, a mile, mile and a quarter. Exceptional horses like Kingston Town could do that sort of stuff. And I find there's only a minority of horses that can do that, and I call them exceptional race horses.
The euphoria of that unique achievement was tempered somewhat by the fact that you were overlooked when it came time for the official presentation of trophies after those two big races. How much did that hurt at the time?
For me at that time, I guess it was a mixed feeling, John, to be quite truthful. I thought, oh, everybody's out there, that's cool.
Were you amazed that you weren't invited out there?
Well, I knew the procedure, and yeah, I was.
Did you feel there were racist undertones at the time?
I never ever looked at myself as a black and white issue. All my life I've been like that, and that never entered my mind at the time, to be quite truthful.
You thought it was a genuine oversight?
Well...
Or didn't you pay it much attention?
I guess I was a bit pissed off with it, to put it bluntly. I said, look at this. I said, so what? I rode him. I won them.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won.
You must have been a pretty good sport at that time, because the AJC relented after copping a hammering in the press for the few days after Derby Day. And the following Saturday, the late Sir Brian Crowley had you out there in front of the crowd and made a special presentation to you. Did you accept it graciously, or were you bitter?
My feelings were mixed. At that time, I thought, oh well, it's a nice thing they're doing. I can't refuse this. I can't say, you know, I don't really need it anyway. And
you were
so
probably entitled to tell them what to do with their gull-mounted whip.
well, probably as time has changed, I could be in a position to do that. But at that time, because of the power and authority that the clubs had over licensees, I was in no position to do that at that time. So I accepted gracefully and I said, you know, thanks very much, lovely.
Not long after your day of days, you suffered horrific injuries in a freak accident. You actually fell through a glass door. It was much publicised at the time, and there were all sorts of theories being expounded as to how it happened. What happened, Darb?
I was actually out with a friend of mine from Queensland and come down with a grey horse. He rang me up. I went and rode brokers in the Caulfield Cup, broker tip in the Caulfield Cup. And I started from 80 an alley, and I was on the fence by the time I got the winning post the first time. I got 2 months. I
Cleaned a few up.
I couldn't understand why. And I was off, and I doing not much, and Larry Olsen arrived. He said, Darb. I said, how are you? And we were yarning. He said, mate, I'm here with a good horse. I said, oh, you're riding the barrier trials today, Tuesday here at Randwick again.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I've got a couple of rides. He said, we'll go and have a bit of dinner together. I said, okay. So I had a few drinks, and I came out. I did go through the plate glass door, and I had a couple of charges with him.
Now, the injuries were not pretty.
No.
And the scars, and Darb, if I may ask you to show me, so many years on, 30 years on,
Yep.
the legacy of the night you fell through that plate glass door.
Well, I'll show you. I've actually seen my elbow. It went right through, right around here to the bone. I had 150 stitches internally and about 130 externally. And then there was another operation. I don't have any wrist movements. I've had a sinew transplant here, and the ulnar nerve was transferred around here by, actually I think it was the treasurer of the AJC at the time, Dr. Dennis Rowe.
Yes, he was.
When I came back, I had a glove cut, a golf glove, and I could close my hands, fingers like that, so, and I would put my reins in there and just close them like that and ride that way.
Did you ever get anywhere near your best again?
Yes, I believe I did. I believe I did, but it took me some years to regain that confidence and to be able to master and cope with it. It took me years.
Well, Darb, we're about 10 paces from a room in which you spent a heck of a lot of time in the 1960s, the Randwick Jockey's Room. You know, there's still an old photo of you hanging up on the wall somewhere in there. Why don't we wander in, find the photo, sit down and tell a few more tall tales of the turf from the Darby McCarthy scrapbook.
Love to.
We'll do that after this break on Inside Racing. Well, Darb, this must be an eerie feeling for you, walking back into this place after all these years. You wouldn't have any idea the last time you were here.
No, it's too far back for me, John. I can't remember. It's like walking back in time, coming back here and walking through here.
Who were the characters of the Jockey's Room in your day?
Well, we had at the funny side of it, we had Billy Kamer, Potty, Mully, the late Stan Cassidy. We were a bit of a joke. Then we also had the serious side, the late Jack Thompson and George Moore, and all that business to attend to. We'd do that, but when we had nothing to do, we'd...
I won't ask you to elaborate on that. Yeah. Hey, you know that old photo I was mentioned to you?
Yep.
There it is. Still holding pride of place directly over the seat that you occupied when you were riding.
Yep. It's nice to come back and look at something like that, John. That's where I did sit in the jockey's room.
Yeah.
And see my photograph up there. It's really nice and see the other ones around the room also.
Well, the kid from Cunnamulla went on to see a lot of this big, wide, wonderful world. You rode in several countries around the world.
I didn't have a lot of success in Europe, John. In Asia, I did very well, more so than in Paris. I went across and rode in the Irish Derby. I rode in the 67 Irish Derby that Nijinsky won. I was asked a question just recently, actually, over the Birmingham luncheon, which are the best two horses. So I said, well, the two that stand out in my mind, I said Tulloch and Nijinsky. And I rode Tulloch, but never rode him in a race. And I've seen Nijinsky win the Irish Derby and the French Derby, and you know,
he was really something.
Oh, something special, and so was Tulloch.
Well, Darby, you've been married more than once. Have you been lucky in love throughout your life?
Yep. Yep. Always. I couldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. I've always felt that what I've done in the past and in love, and I'm very happy with my life, and I'm contented with what has happened.
Well, there are two achievements, aside from racing, of which you're especially proud. Two achievements that are immensely important to Darby McCarthy.
Besides me getting a lot out of racing, I gave back to racing something that's very special. I set up the first jockey training school for British jockeys in Toowoomba. There was never anything in the manuals of TAFE at the time, and I actually wrote the curriculum for TAFE, for the Apprentice Jockey Training School, which is now going right across this continent. And the other one is the Appeals Tribunal, concerning horse racing, harness and greyhound. That came out of my disqualification during the Blue Bubble inquiry, a Hamilton Cup meeting. It was 76 or 75, which has now gone right across this continent. So besides me getting something out of racing, when I'm ready to go to my dream time, I've written something there that'll be there for Preston forever. So I feel good about that.
Darby McCarthy is currently working on his memoirs with Victorian journalist Lauren Calloway. That book should be out sometime in the year 2001, and you can take it from me, it will be an absorbing account of a fascinating life on and off the track. Look forward to your company again next week when we introduce another famous face. Until then, many winners.